a brand new week and a brand new edition of The World Today. Here's what's coming up on the program. Staying in the U.S., Nikki Haley defeats former U.S. President Donald Trump in the Washington, D.C. Republican primary. Welcome back. We'll delve a little now into politics in the U.S. And what a win for former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, who defeated former President Donald Trump at the Republican primaries in Washington, D.C. on Sunday. This is Haley's first victory over Trump since the race to the White House began. She'd even lost to Trump in her home state of South Carolina. Haley, a former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, won 62.9% of the vote, beating Donald Trump's 33.2%. It is seen as a largely symbolic win, as the capital is a heavily Democratic-leaning jurisdiction with only about 23,000 registered Republicans in the city. Trump, however, has a huge lead over Ms. Haley and is likely to face Joe Biden in the November election. A Trump campaign, however, was quick to dismiss Haley's win, calling her the queen of the swamp. Haley has vowed to stay in the race until at least March 5th, when thousands of people will cast their votes on Super Tuesday.
A stunning 70% of the...
Let's bring in Maria Bird, our Washington, D.C. correspondent. Maria, great to see you. We're right up your alley on this one. How excited was Nikki Haley and her team to have recorded this major win, though coming rather late in the Republican primaries, considering Trump already has so many wins?
Yes, you are correct. This is more of, as you stated, a symbolic win. This win, we know that the Washington, D.C. area is heavily Democratic. Not only are they heavily Democratic, they are heavily traditionalist in the Republican Party. We all know as the insurrection affected the entire country, it specifically affected those residents of Washington. And so those residents are a little bit more sensitive to the ideas surrounding that, which means that the former president might not have as much of an opportunity to secure that election, those votes from those individuals. So this was one that I think Nikki Haley's excited about, but doesn't necessarily say what will happen on Super Tuesday. I think that we're far-fetched from seeing that. I think that other races are a greater indicator as to what we could see for Super Tuesday.
But I'm sure, Maria, there is some hope, about Super Tuesday tomorrow. I mean, this win is significant. It's happening just before, the rest of the votes happen on Tuesday. She is sticking to the end, isn't she?
She's sticking till the end. I think that she's also hopeful that there could be some legal challenges that the former president faces. I think that has been really what she has been hopeful for the entire time, because if there are, obviously that will put her in a better position. But I think that, as you said, she's vowing to stick out through Super Tuesday. But it'll be very interesting to see once those votes come in, which everyone is predicting that he will have a very large lead and will take most of the states. If she will still bow out or if she will continue to stay in the race. So that, I think, is a question that many are waiting to see what will actually happen, because obviously she will not necessarily have to leave the race until all primary elections are completed and we are in a position which will be around this late spring, early summer, where a candidate has been clearly identified by the election committee.
Well, props to her for staying till this time, Maria. She already lost in her home state of South Carolina. Are there any chances that anything could swing in her favor tomorrow? I mean, there's such a wide margin between Trump and her. So what significance will tomorrow hold for her with the rest of the primaries?
Well, the former president vows very well in communities that are rural, communities that have lower educational attainment. We know in Washington, one of the things that was to her benefit, pretty much the majority of individuals hold a degree. And so high academic, high individuals that have, whether it's high net worth or also a different level of academic attainment, seem to be leaning toward a different focal point and a different candidate for this election cycle. So I think that is one piece that she can definitely depend on. So when you look at some smaller areas in the United States, you look at areas like Rhode Island, especially New England area, how he will fare there. I think that could potentially be, she could see some votes in those. Will she be able to potentially overtake and be able to win some of those primaries? I think that is a little bit larger of a challenge for her. But if we are considering anything that she could potentially see as a positive for her, it would be the New England region where there's smaller populations of Republicans, and also areas that might have a higher level of educational attainment.
Maria, do you think she could also possibly become a vice presidential candidate for Donald Trump? You think he'd ever consider that?
Well, typically that's what you see. Typically you see an individual like Nikki Haley who has stuck through the race, who does have some sort of a base of supporters, especially when you talk about, we see that President Biden has a woman as his running mate. There's a woman vice president. So that would be something that many political strategists would suggest would be a smart move. But knowing where the former president and Nikki Haley's relationship currently stands, I think that's a little bit of a potential challenge for them. And so we might not see that as a running mate unless the Republican strategists truly convince the former president that that would be the best option for him moving forward.
Well, let's bring in the man of the hour, Donald Trump, former president of the United States. He lost in Washington, which is he only gained 33.2% of the votes, but he's accused Haley of being a loser. I mean, she's lost so far up until now. He was also quick to dismiss her as Queen of the Swamp. Any reason why Trump would refer to her as this? I mean, there's a lot of bad blood, I guess, between them. But let's not forget that Haley was also UN ambassador under Trump.
Yes, I think that for those who are Trump supporters, that's what they thrive off of. They thrive off of the conversations that really are, those hot ticket words and kind of negative connotations around the challenger. I think that's where he has seen a majority of his upswing, as you talk about, kind of how so many individuals support him. Using those type of terms is what gets him in the news, what gets the media to surround, him and what he's looking to do. And I think the voters that he has built, the base that he's built, are looking at that language as being very different. They're looking at that language as being something that is exciting. I mean, this is where, you talk about rural communities and kind of the culture that exists. I think he's thriving on, and he's really trying to speak to that base that he's been able to rise up, who are not traditional voters. That's the other thing we have to remember. Once the former president became a part of the election cycle back in 2016, his base, who were traditionally not voters, are now a part of the voting base, which has caused major challenges for the Democratic Party. And so he's been able to bring forth people that typically don't see why they should be voting, and they don't see the importance of voting. So that's who he's speaking to, and those individuals that are going to listen to and that are going to accept that type of rhetoric.
Yeah, and the Republican primaries have been so exciting, I have to admit, Maria, they've been more exciting to watch than the Democratic camp, the Democratic primaries have been. But there should be some excitement tomorrow, right, that we should be expecting from the Democratic camp, even though the only candidate they seem to have is Joe Biden.
Yes, you're correct. There will be much excitement, much to discuss after Super Tuesday. Wednesday will be a day, I think, that we will really have a chance to really dissect and analyze what is going to be next for the White House in the U.S. The U.S. is going through quite a bit at this time, and so I think this is going to really set the precedence for how America will be moving forward. So Super Tuesday, there will be a lot to see.
Yeah, but how much really would there be to see? Because President Biden is really the only challenger, in the Democratic Party. Is it possible that people will not vote for him? Is it possible he could lose some votes in the primaries?
That's really, I think, where we're going to see most of kind of the interesting perspectives. Even though there's no real challenger, there will be individuals on the ballot that are going to be running for the Democratic Party, even though they have not risen to the reins of being able to be a true challenger of the president. But to your point, whether this will show if people come out to vote, that's the piece I think that is going to be clearly identifiable through Super Tuesday. If we just use, for example, if there are 1 million voters in the state of Rhode Island that are Democratic, and we only see half of those voters coming out, where maybe in previous years we've seen 70 to 80% of those voters coming out to vote, we know that the Democratic Party is in a challenging position and could potentially be seeing greater challenges moving forward, especially as you talk about being able to compete against the Republican Party and specifically the former president.
Maria, thanks again.
Thank you.
Other stories now. South Korea and the United States have begun their annual joint military drills in efforts to bolster readiness against North Korea. The drills, which are expected to hold for 11 days, will integrate elements of live exercises with constructive simulations. Spokesperson for South Korea's Joint Chief of Staff, Lee Song-jun, had earlier said the drills will focus on deterring North Korea's nuclear threat. North Korea has previously condemned U.S. and South Korea joint military drills, but has not yet made any official comment or response to the current exercises. Leader Kim Jong-un has drawn an increasingly harder line against South Korea in recent months, saying the North will no longer seek reconciliation and reunification with the South, and instructed the country's army, munitions industry, nuclear weapons and civil defense sectors to accelerate war preparations in response to confrontation moves by the United States. Well, at least 12 people have been killed, around 4,000 inmates on the loose now after armed gangs stormed 2 major prisons in Haiti. Event has forced the government to declare a 72-hour state of emergency. The latest upsurge in violence began on Thursday when Prime Minister Ariel Henry traveled to Nairobi, Kenya, to discuss sending a Kenyan-led multinational security force to Haiti. In a bid to oust the Prime Minister, gang leaders say they want to force his resignation and declared a coordinated attack to remove him. Since 2020, thousands of people have been killed in violent gang wars in the country. Argentina's city of Corrientes has been hit by severe storms, causing some of the worst flooding in the area. Drone footage shows the heavily flooded streets. There we are. And the city following the heavy downpour. Local authorities pumped away water to the submerged cars and buildings. The governor of Corrientes province, Gustavo Valdez, has declared a state of emergency following the incident. Here in Africa, regional prosecutors in Burkina Faso have revealed about 170 people have been killed in the space of 1 week by unknown attackers. A statement by Ali Benjamin Coulibaly says the attackers targeted 4 villages in Yatanga province in the northern region before executing several people on February 25th. The statement did not name the attackers, but Burkina Faso has been battling an Islamist militant insurgency in its north and east. Armed groups, some affiliated to Al-Qaeda and ISIS, regularly launch attacks on civilian and military installations. The violence has killed almost 20,000 people and displaced more than 2 million people. An investigation is underway, with authorities appealing to the public for information. About half of the country is outside government control, as armed groups have ravaged the country for years. 6 people have died in Mauritius after a fire broke out during a Hindu pilgrimage. 7 others were injured in the incident and have been admitted to hospital. Police say a wooden and bamboo cart carrying effigies of deities caught fire after coming into contact with electric wires. The pilgrims were said to be walking to Grand Basin Lake, considered sacred by the island's Hindu community, ahead of a religious festival on March 8th. Those who died were aged between 18 and 20. Prime Minister Pravin Jugnauth has conveyed his deep shock and condolences in the wake of the tragic incident. More from Africa, the UNICEF Deputy Executive Director Ted Chiban is urging the international community to immediately scale up its support for children and families to avert a deepening humanitarian catastrophe throughout Ethiopia. During a 5-day visit, Mr. Chiban visited one of the hardest hit drought areas in Tigray, where malnutrition rates have surpassed the emergency threshold. To further complicate the situation, there is a public health emergency taking place across the nation with outbreaks of cholera, measles, dengue fever, and malaria. UNICEF says it's in strong collaboration with the government and other partners working to respond to the crisis, providing nutritional support, as well as safe water, routine immunization, education, and child protection services.
I'm here in Tigray in February at a time where families should be enjoying the fruits of their crops to sustain themselves and their families. But in Tigray, like in much of Ethiopia from north to south, we're facing the results of an El Nino-driven drought, of different disease outbreaks, including cholera, of the knock-on effect of COVID and conflict, and the coping mechanisms of family are at the absolute stretch. We need to support children and their families now during this upcoming lean season, which is going to stretch into September, to avoid the worst. We need to be able to support health extension workers, to be able to treat children against severe acute malnutrition and other childhood illnesses. We need to be able to get food aid to the 6.5 million individuals that are in need of food aid now. We need to be able to have water systems in place that both provide clean drinking water for families, but also allow them to have household-based food security activities to sustain themselves. UNICEF has been a key partner of Ethiopia the last 70 years. We're here working in health, in nutrition, in education, in water sanitation and hygiene and child protection to support the population. We're appealing for $535 million, and every dollar that you contribute makes a real difference for children and their families. We cannot forget Ethiopia. We need to be here during this difficult time for children and their families.
Here in Lagos, the Commissioner for Agriculture, Abisola Olusoya, would like to see agri startups leverage on technology to provide solutions to economic challenges and rising cost of food items in the country. She gave the charge during the Agri-Innovation Tribe meeting in Ikoyi, Lagos. She asked youths to get involved in development process and help solve food crisis in Nigeria.
It's full speed ahead for the Lagos state government as it races towards achieving food sufficiency. The government is catching them young in this journey of agriculture development as it involves the youths, who are already part of the state government's Agri-Innovation initiative. This time, they are being engaged by the State Ministry of Agriculture on how to harmonize and solve common problems associated with startups in the agri sector.
There's something about starting small and starting lean. That is the most important element of building a business.
The state government encourages the youths to get on board and walk the path of change they all crave.
You must be a part of the system, understand the system properly to be able to deep dive enough to start to make the change you want to see. There also is, like he said, it's to start to harmonize all of what we do, all of the issues we're facing. And we as government can also begin to partner with them to help you deliver services that would, number one, come cheaper to you, and also you get it in such a way and manner that it makes a lot of sense. And then the partnership and network that you would also share here, it would also carry you through tough times.
The Chief Executive Officer of Eco Innovation Center says the current food crisis is not peculiar to Nigeria. He asks youths involved in the agric business to leverage on technology in closing value chain supply gaps.
As a country of 200 million people and growing at 6.7%, we cannot afford not to take agriculture as a big deal. And so my charge to the young entrepreneurs in agric is how they use technology to be able to scale their business and increase our production and the capability of Nigeria and Nigerians to feed themselves.
Meanwhile, the State Commissioner for Agriculture, Bisola Olusoya, clamors for more young entrepreneurs to show interest in the agriculture sector and help solve the food security challenge.
We're at a turning point in the history of Nigeria, where food insecurity has now become such a major challenge, but we face a bigger problem. The younger generation, you're talking of your primary schools, your secondary schools, they do not aspire to go into anything related to food. And as such, that becomes a big problem, a big challenge that we must tackle head on. So the idea is around also innovating, bringing about new inventions within the food space tailored to our own peculiarities and our own needs.
Agric entrepreneurs are also being encouraged to work closely with the government in reshaping the agriculture sector to grow various businesses across all value chains in the state.
Welcome back. We're staying with developments on the continent. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, says the crisis in Sudan is a tragedy that appears to have slipped into the fog of global amnesia. Mr. Turk was speaking at the UN Human Rights Council during his presentation of a new report on violations and abuses of international human rights law committed by the warring parties in Sudan between April and December 2023. He says both factions have consistently acted with impunity and a distinct lack of accountability for the multiple violations committed. He's calling on states with influence to increase pressure on the two parties and their affiliates to negotiate a peaceful solution and to pursue and sustain a ceasefire.
For nearly 11 months now, the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces, as well as their affiliates, have been fighting a ruthless, senseless conflict. They have killed thousands, seemingly without remorse. They have manufactured a climate of sheer terror, forcing millions to flee. They have let the people who could not or would not escape suffer, destroying medical services and blocking humanitarian aid. And they have consistently acted with impunity and a distinct lack of accountability for the multiple violations that have been committed, continuing to stagnate on any talks and negotiations which would achieve much-needed peace, safety and dignity for the people of Sudan. In the space of 11 months, at least 14,600 people have been killed and 26 others injured. Actual figures are undoubtedly much higher. The toll encompasses thousands of civilians, including many children and women. Many humanitarian and health workers have also lost their lives as they worked under fire to help people in need. Sudan has become a living nightmare. Almost half of the population, 25 million people, are in urgent need of food and medical aid. Some 80% of hospitals have been put out of service. The apparently deliberate denial of safe and unimpeded access for humanitarian agencies within Sudan itself constitutes a serious violation of international law and may amount to war crime. I call again on the warring parties to meet their legal obligations by opening humanitarian corridors without delay before more lives are lost.
Further down south in the continent, it is election season. South Africa's third largest party, the Economic Freedom Fighters, has announced a bold plan vowing to eliminate township debts owed to Eskom if it gains control of Gauteng province after the upcoming elections. That announcement came during the party's provincial manifesto launch in Dobbinsville, Soweto, following its main manifesto event in KwaZulu-Natal last month. Party leader Julius Malema emphasized the commitment to providing free electricity to poor households under an EFF government, echoing the manifesto theme, "Our land now, jobs now, end load shedding."
We want to say to the people of Soweto that the EFF is going to write off all the debt that is owed to ESCOM for all townships and poor households. Comrades, Gauteng will no longer be a province. There will no longer be a province called Limpopo. There won't be a province called Mpumalanga. We don't want provinces in the EFF. Provinces are a waste of money. Today, no one can tell me as to what is the role of the Premier, what is the role of the MEC. Mayors are more important and play important role better than the Premiers and MECs. Councillors play more important role better than the MECs. We don't want provincial legislatures. Moshe, you must start looking for a job because there won't be a legislature.
It's known simply as Art Dubai. The Middle East's leading international art fair returned for its 17th edition today, featuring a strong focus on the shared cultural connections of the global south. Patrons walked the halls of the gallery in Madinat Jumeirah and taken in paintings and sculptures from an array of contemporary international artists, as well as digital installations and modern abstract works. According to a press release, the three-day Art Dubai 2024 will display the artworks of over 400 artists from 40 countries, an event which was held in 2007, the first of its kind. It runs from March 1st to March 3rd.
I believe Art Dubai is a very great fair, not only 2024, but as a general fair in a worldwide scene, an art scene. It gathers international and very particular galleries. Either it is contemporary artworks or modern artworks, and lately the digital and the NFTs. This is the art gallery's 7th or 8th year, so we are actually quite experienced with Art Dubai. Like always, it's really crowded. People are quite interested. We are quite happy with the general interest of the audience.
And one more for our art lovers. The opening ceremony of the World Youth Festival 2024 was held at the Art.Molodos International Mall in the Syria's Federal Territory on Saturday. This is in Russia. Participants from different countries during the vibrant show, which includes the singing of the Russian national anthem and an address by President Vladimir Putin, as well as musical performances. It also included traditional Russian folk songs. The World Youth Festival takes place from March 1st to the 7th, aimed at developing international youth cooperation and bringing together 20,000 young people. The regional program will take place from the 10th to the 17th of March, during which the participants will visit 30 Russian cities. The Cyrus Innovation Science and Technology Center is the first federal territory in Russia, located on the Black Sea coast near the city of Sok. Lots to keep us fascinated this week. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.